My name is Sam Alenikoff. I'm the founder and executive director of College AIM, a college access and success organization here in the Metro Atlanta area. We work with about 1,000 really incredible students on their paths to and through college, and are constantly looking for ways to improve the work that we do, but then also share the knowledge that we are building with the broader college access and success community. So today we are launching our college equity series, where we will have 4 of these lunchtime conversations throughout the course of the year, once a quarter, with experts from the college access and success world. Today, we are so lucky to be joined by the co-founders of College Equity First and the creators of a really wonderful tool that College AIM has been using this year, the College Equity Index. So I'm going to go ahead for the sake of time and just jump in and introduce these 3 incredible individuals, and then we're going to jump into the conversation. So I am joined on this call by Dr. Monica Randall. Dr. Monica Randall, and I'm reading off her bio here. I don't have it memorized. I apologize. So if I'm looking off screen, that's all I'm looking at. But Dr. Monica Randall is passionate about student success. For over 25 years, she sat on the quote, other side of the college gate, admitting college students, overseeing financial aid policies, and working with international students. She founded an independent consulting practice to share her insider's knowledge about higher education, and her commitment to improving college access for students from first-generation immigrant families and students with special dietary needs are unique features of her practice. In 2021, she expanded her commitment to equity by co-founding College Equity First Incorporated. I'm also joined by Dr. Deborah Felix. And Dr. Deborah Felix is a former dean of admissions at Columbia University. She now counsels students on college fit and culture and how to navigate the admissions process effectively and efficiently. She's a graduate of Swarthmore College, the University of Maryland, and Columbia University. Our third guest for today is Sydney Montgomery, Esquire. Sydney Montgomery, the CEO of S. Montgomery Admissions Consulting, specializes in helping first-generation and minority college and law school applicants. A graduate of Princeton University and Harvard Law School, Sydney works to dismantle systemic racism in education, pushing counselors and universities to be culturally competent through published articles, speaking engagements, and the College Equity Index. Sydney was awarded a Making a Difference Award in 2020 from the Independent Educational Consultants Association, was named a 2021 Counselor of the Year with the Potomac and Chesapeake Association for College Admission Counseling. She is a Kappa Alpha Theta 35 under 35 awardee this year and is named one of Women's E! News 21 Leaders of the 21st Century. So as you can tell, I am joined by an esteemed group of guests, 3 individuals who, as I've said a few times, have just created an incredible organization, an incredible tool that I want more people to know about. And I'm hopeful that this call will be a piece of that conversation. So I am gonna, at this point, take off my speaking hat and put on my listening hat, because it's time for me to be quiet and for us to hear from the experts. So I want to start by kind of proposing this to the whole panel, to all 3 of our guests. And I'd love to just start by hearing what led you to create the College Equity Index.
So I'll take that one, I guess. Just about a year ago, while I was working on a college list for a Black student, it occurred to me that I really didn't know which colleges would be best for him. And I had wondered where he would get the best education, where he might feel safe, supported, developed, and valued as a Black student. And I really didn't know where that would be. And this wasn't the first time I had worked with a Black student, but I decided this time that I should really try harder to find out what the climate was like on different campuses so that I could give him the best list possible. And when I looked on the web for information, all I found were things like the percentage of Black students on different campuses and maybe the graduation rates of Black students. But sometimes the schools folded Black students into a larger category of students of color that included Southeast Asian, Hispanic, and other students. I couldn't find any information, any reliable information about the racial climate on these campuses. And so I called Monica and I said, help me, you know, where can I find information like that? And she said, I don't know. So we decided that we should just collect it ourselves somehow. And she really helped me to determine which criteria we should use, what criteria we should collect, what information we should try to collect. And she didn't just help with that, but she jumped in with both feet to move this project forward. And then around last September, we asked Sydney Montgomery to join us because we really needed another intelligent, objective perspective on this. And she's now also become obviously an equal partner in this. I had no idea what I was getting into just over a year ago. And now we've got a nonprofit, we've developed this equity index, it's online, it's freely available to everyone. We're using it. I'm so glad to hear you all are using it. And thanks again for inviting us. I hope that answers that question adequately.
It definitely does. And the index has honestly become a really central tool in list building for us. Every time that College AIM is working with a student and we see a student who has some of the schools potentially on their list that are also on the index, we make sure to go over and look at what the scores are and use that to inform if it makes sense really to put a school on a student's list. So it's an incredible tool for us. I would love to hear more about what it is and for someone from your team to be able to share that. So maybe Dr. Randall or Sydney, would one of y'all be able to share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the index it really synthesizes, both qualitative and quantitative data about each institution, through data collection, through analysis. It is basically our attempt to evaluate the access and affordability, the diversity, the campus climate, and the outcomes for Black students in a format that's really easy to digest. And I'm going to share it with you just a little bit. It's very different from other rankings or indexes. For example, of course, we're all familiar with US News and World Report. Well, US News and World Report, they use about 17 different academic criteria, but some of them include things like prestige and reputation, selectivity, alumni giving, faculty resources. But what it doesn't really do is talk about the actual experiences of minoritized students on those campuses. It doesn't really, look to see what their outcomes are. An overall graduation rate might be great, an overall employment score might be great, but just because that's the overall score doesn't mean that the Black students on campus are having even close to the same numbers or percentages as the rest of the students, especially if it's a school that doesn't have a lot of diversity, a predominantly white institution. Those numbers can really overshadow some of the issues. So what we wanted to do is take a closer look and see, okay, how are Black students faring on this campus? How are they thriving or not thriving? How are they kind of fitting into the larger narrative that the school is trying to show? So I have here for you, just so you can kind of see it, what the College Equity Index looks like, which you can download for free on our website, collegeequityfirst.org. And so, we have 19 different criteria that we use to evaluate these schools in terms of, like I said, access, affordability, campus culture, diversity, graduation rates, and overall investment. And you can see a lot of the data comes from EdTrust, from the Chronicle, from the Alumni Factor. And, we couldn't do every single school in the country, but we did select 105 of some of the top private universities in the school, and each school will get an overall grade, but then each school also gets a breakdown for access and affordability, for diversity, for campus culture and outcomes. So you can see maybe where one school is doing really great in one area, but not as great in another area, which is super important when we're talking about list building, because we all know that students have different things that they're looking for. Some students might be really keen on affordability and access, and some students might be more keen on diversity. Now, the goal of this isn't to say, oh, look at the school that got an F, how dare they suck. Although, it's not great if they got an F in an area, but the goal is to push them to be better. Maybe there's a school that got an F in an area, but there's a peer institution that got a B in that same area. Well, what are they doing? What can that school do? We would love for this to be a tool that is not only used by counselors and students and families, which is so important, but we would love this to be a tool that universities are talking about, that they are constantly trying to improve themselves, to strive to be better, so that they have high marks in all of the areas and they can see the areas that would be great for them to improve upon.
Awesome. I love seeing you scroll through. I encourage everybody, while you're on this call, go download it right now and use it in your practices if you're working directly with high school students. I think that last point that you made, Sydney, though, is really critical, that this is something that colleges need to be looking at as well. This is not just the high school side. And I know that there are some college representatives on this call. I hope that the takeaway is going to be, we're going to look at this, we're going to see where our school ranks if our school is listed, and we're going to figure out who's doing better in those areas and how we can do better ourselves. I love that this is a tool that can be used on both sides. And I just so appreciate that this is what y'all have created. I'd love to jump over to kind of why this is so critical. And I think we've touched on this a bit, but I'd love to hear about why this is really critical for the college access community to use this tool on the high school side. I know I've shared a bit about how College AIM has used it, but I would love to hear how y'all envision the college access community using this tool as well. That can be for anyone, whoever is best fit to answer that question.
So I'll take this this question. Right now, currently, I'm in a unique position in that not only do I advise other students, but I find myself in the position of advising my daughter, who is a rising senior. And someone asked me the other day, "Oh, where do you want her to go to school?" And I said, "Well, hold up. I am searching, and I hope that she finds a place where she can thrive." That's important to me. And that's what this is all about. It is about how important campus climate is for students, for all students, and especially for Black students. Having a campus environment where a student can feel safe, valued, supported, developed, and celebrated. Those are all important determinants, and they're all used, of course. We know that they're important factors when you're looking at retention rates or when students graduate, et cetera. So with assessing campus climate, we took all of this into consideration in terms of how engaged students felt, their sense of belonging. All of this comes into factor and comes into consideration. How are students developed spiritually? Do they develop lifelong friendships, etc.? One thing that we did, which I think is pretty unique, is that we looked at and we tried to gauge, students of this generation, they use social media a lot. So we looked at student publications, we looked at websites, we looked at mainstream media, and I recommend that any of you building a list, have your students look at Instagram posts. So in response to all the things that have been happening over the last year, a lot of student groups, especially Black student groups, have on Instagram Black at and then the name of the college. So if you have a student who might be interested in, I don't know, Princeton, for example, you can say Black at Princeton on Instagram, and information will pop up. And you can get a sense or a feel as to kind of like what the students are talking about on campus, which we felt was really important to do and to show, especially when you're trying to find a place for a student to thrive.
That's really helpful. And I appreciate that you're not only sharing with us this index, but pointing us to some of the resources that you use to create the index and some of the information that has informed your work, so that we can dig deeper ourselves as well. That's really helpful. So we don't just have to look at a letter grade, we can look even deeper. I'm curious to hear from the team what the index has dropped. It's here for us to use. What's going on now with the organization? What are you working on now? What's next that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so we have a lot of really exciting things in the pipeline. So we've developed a survey that is going out to Black college students on this list. We started the summer, and we're hoping, to continue to roll that out through the fall, because the data that we collect about their current experiences will be folded into our database in the fall, and the index will be updated and re-released in early 2022. We think it's important to continue to have relevant and timely information, but also the student voice is so important. So we actually had a volunteer over the summer that really helped us, and we're continuing to look for volunteer interns to help us follow up with Black college students to motivate them to complete the survey. But then also we're looking at how can we roll this out to more colleges and universities and get this in the hands of those that are in the position to start the conversations at their schools. And then, ultimately looking to create more of a guide, more substantive piece of work, and have these the surveys lead to substantive interviews and questions that we can use as we help students and parents look beyond just the numbers, of course, but also listen to how students are sharing about their experiences, because we think that storytelling, of course, is some of the most powerful things that we do as humans. And, you can look at numbers all that you want, but when you really have the experience from students on those campuses, that really speaks volumes. We would love, in general, for the College Equity Index to, become a household name. It's something that colleges know is going to come out every year or every other year, and that students and parents know they can trust the information on the index.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I see some good questions coming in the chat as well. So I'm going to try to jump in and ask a couple of those as well. And then I'll try to circle back at the end to ask some of those too. So there was one question that came in just recently, asking why public colleges and universities were not part of the surveyed institutions, or were not listed on the index. And I guess my follow-up question to that is, are there any kind of next steps as well to try to include some of those public institutions or potentially flagship institutions in the conversation as well?
Yes, we couldn't do all of them. There's so many colleges and universities out there that we just had to limit what we did so that we could actually get something done. And we decided to go with the more well-known sort of elite private schools first. And then we wanted to do a public school, public flagship list next. And we are trying to collaborate with a group of 125 public universities who are actually on this road already, and that they are trying to be more equitable, and they're sharing resources and best practices. So once we finish redoing the current index using the qualitative data that we're collecting this summer and fall, then I think we'll turn our attention to the public universities.
Yeah, I think we were thinking about it in terms of, baby steps, because the data was overwhelming. And there are only 3 of us. So and doing this volunteer, we're volunteering our time, et cetera. So just what Dr. Felix said, making sure that we have that first step, and then we're going to go on to that next level, especially as we continue to develop our surveys.
And I would say that, ideally with every organization, right, we are just the 3 of us. So I know sometimes people ask how they can help. But like I said, we are always looking for volunteers or even support. We're trying to get more grants and fundings or even donations so that we can have a more robust team, and we can, get this data out to, about more schools. Because when you look at flagship universities, you look at private schools, you have to adjust your criteria a little bit. They're apples and oranges, right? And so we will be rerunning the methodology with, slightly different criteria as we look to public schools. And then, eventually, like I said, we'd like to expand, of course, but all of that does require time and resources and funding. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to expand our reach soon with that.
You read my mind with that next piece, Sydney. So my question to you is, how should people reach out? How can they donate? How can they provide volunteer hours? How can they support with helping kind of plug you into grant opportunities? How can people get involved in those ways?
Well, we have a fantastic newsletter that you can subscribe to once you download the index. I will also go ahead, though, and drop on our website. You will see a donate link, but there's also a bit.ly donate college equity link that I also dropped. You can also email us at info@collegeequityfirst.org if you are looking for volunteer opportunities, or if you have a college student or a relative that is looking for some volunteer opportunities. We love working with, Gen Zers, I'm a millennial. So it's really great because it would be helpful to have more of also a social media presence so that we can get this out to more teens. As we mentioned, they're on social media. And so in terms of manpower and funding, I would say, yeah, the donate link, the bit.ly link are on our website, or just email us about volunteer opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm hopeful that some of our audience today will be excited to get engaged, because I know the people who are on this call are those who are most interested in using the tool. So hopefully they can also be those who contribute to the creation of this tool that will be so critical.
And even if anyone wants to volunteer, we're always, like I said, writing grants. And so, grant writers are those that are able to connect us to grant or connect us to press opportunities. I think part of, creating that change with colleges and universities is that has to be something that they care about. And if no one really knows about it, the colleges are not really incentivized to change their rankings on something that's, not very impactful. But the larger presence that we have, the more people that know about this, perhaps the more incentive will be to really take a critical look at this.
And to that point, would it be helpful for folks who work on college campuses to plug you into campus leadership? Is that an opportunity you're looking for as well?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Yes, please. And also, we have developed, as we mentioned before, our campus culture survey that we're rolling out. And so connecting us to current students who, like Black students who are in the Black Student Union, et cetera, because I really think that our survey is really going to help inform a lot of what we've done and then now and then going forward. So being able, if you have a student at one of these institutions, we could really connect us with Black Student Union. That would be just helpful, so helpful to us. Okay.
Wonderful. And the best way to do that is also to reach out via email to plug in.
Correct.
Perfect. Well, I want to make sure we're also addressing a couple other questions that are coming through the chat. And there was a good one that just came in a few minutes ago that asked for a deeper dive on the methodology. So the question says, I know from looking at rankings or ratings that it's all about the formula. And I'm trying to get a sense of what determines if a school gets an A, B, C, D, or F in a respective category. So I think the audience would love to hear more about that.
Right. So we had to add our own judgment into this. And once we had all the data and we were able to divide it up into the 4 categories, we decided which ones to weight more heavily than others. And it was pretty difficult to do this, but we did weight them. And then once we did that, we looked at what we had and we graded them in a way in which a professor might grade, a group of students. The ones that had the highest scores got the highest grade, and the ones with the terrible low scores got the Fs. There were usually natural breaks between groups. So we're continually going to revisit the formula we use as we add more qualitative data, although we are asking for that data. All those questions are on a Likert scale so that we'll have quantitative data to work with. We will be, revising it accordingly. And I don't know what else to say about that.
I would say that also, like, our method, like the 19 factors that we used are on the index. So all of the data is available except for, the data that we purchased, which we can't share because we purchased it. But, they're broken up into 4 categories, and it's pretty easy to see kind of which ones of those 19 criteria went into which ones of those categories.
That's really helpful. Are there any of those are there any of the criteria that were particularly heavily weighted? I know you said different criteria had different weights. Are there a few that we should maybe raise up as those that were really most critical in the index ratings?
Yeah, the diversity ones were the most heavily weighted. So the percentage of Black students on campus, the percentage of Black faculty and Black administrators at high levels, things like that. That was more heavily weighted.
And what was the reasoning behind that? What was the thought process behind weighting those?
Well, sort of dual. We felt that if a campus had more Black students and more Black administrators and faculty, it would just be a more welcoming environment for a Black student. They could find a mentor, maybe they could find a Black professor. They would be attracted to that environment. They would have peers who they could grow and develop with, and help each other through. Where if, especially at a PWI, at a predominantly white institution, if you're the only Black student or you're one of 4, first of all, what does that say about the school? That they're not attracting a diverse group of students. What does it say about the college if they're not attracting a faculty that's diverse? What's going on there? We just felt like that would be a very good start, that you actually have a maybe critical mass of Black students on the campus and some people in high leadership positions who also understand what a student like that might be going through, and they're there and available to help them.
That makes a lot of sense. I know we are running short on time. We're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes, but I would love if there are any kind of closing thoughts or closing ways that that those in the audience can support this work. I know we've talked a little bit about that. Anything that we haven't talked about that y'all would like to highlight before we hop off?
One thing I'd like to say is that I was actually really blown away by what's going on our college campuses. Really extremely disappointed by the behavior of everyone on those college campuses, especially other students. But what we found in collecting this data and reading all the Black Act comments on Instagram was that there are very few PWIs that are at all comfortable for Black students, that are developing them well, that are keeping them safe. I was just stunned by that. And a lot of my white students now are looking for diverse campuses, and they are eliminating colleges from their list based on our index. And some of them we're developing college lists based on the index. So it's a big problem that needs to be solved by everyone. And so I just encourage everyone to care and to get involved and to help out in any way they can.
Yeah, I love that point, that this is a problem that needs to be solved by everyone. And I'm glad to hear that this is not a tool that is being exclusively used by Black students. This is also a tool that's being used by white students who care about what the campus climate is like for everybody. And I think that's really critical that this work expands to all of our students as well. Any other closing thoughts from Sydney or from Dr. Randall to leave us with?
I think I would just say that I'm really fortunate to be working on this with such amazing women. I know that Monica and I were talking, and some of the same things that she was going through when she wasn't going through college, some of the same things that I experienced when I was going through college, so, and that wasn't even that long ago. And some students are experiencing now. So, while there is progress, it's important to remember that there's still a lot that hasn't changed, and this is still really relevant and really important. And I think, as we look towards the younger generation, it's important that we don't just take for granted that, oh, they're just so much more, woke and culturally competent and everything is great. But, a lot of the comments that we saw in the Black Act data wasn't just from the administration and, professors, but some of it was from peers as well. And that, these behaviors are learned and, perpetuated over time and in certain spaces. So it's really important that we are doing a deep dive on what the campus culture is and how we can change campus culture, because they're impressionable at this age. And I think that we have the opportunity to create a force and a movement for more open and accepting spaces across the country.
And I'd just like to say, and Sydney, you reminded me of this. I can't believe I had to be reminded of this a number of times when I was going through the Black Act data. It was really hard for me. I had to stop and set it aside because it triggered things that happened to me so long ago, so many decades ago, and to see that this is happening to another generation of students, something has to give. It should stop. So to me, being able to really look and take a deep dive into campus culture and really sharing what it's like and having students and hopefully the administrators open their eyes so they can provide a much more, an environment where everyone can thrive is really deep within my heart that I'd like to see and sort of leave for more generation of students to really change what's happening out there.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Randall, and thank you so much for joining us, to the entire panel. Y'all have really opened my eyes to a new way to share this information with students, and I'm hoping that you are simultaneously opening the eyes of many others on this call and well beyond. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to leave with a couple quick plugs. The first is that College AIM, kind of in the same vein, is trying to share information and trying to share experiences as well with the broader community. So we have an upcoming conference called the Metro Atlanta College Access Conference. It's fully virtual. We encourage all the individuals on this call to attend. It's intended for students, for parents, for family members. So if you are connected with students and family members, please have them join as well. We'll have 3 nights of workshops and then a virtual college fair. We say it's Metro Atlanta, but the reality is in the virtual world, it's for anybody. And it's you can find that on our website, collegeaim.org. There's a way to go there and register pretty easily. It's free. There are going to be some wonderful experts there sharing some really great information too. The second plug is that this is going to be a quarterly series. So you can look out for the next installment of the College Equity series in just a few months. That's going to be towards the end of the year. I think we are looking at late fall, early winter for that. So be on the lookout in November and December for communications about the next College Equity series. And just again, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our wonderful panel, to everybody who is here on the call, and to our team at College AIM. Joanne Santavasi, who you may see in the list of guests, is the coordinator for all of this. She runs this event. I just get to be here and talk with incredible people, but she is the one who organizes it all. So a big thank you to Joanne and the rest of the College AIM team too. Thank you so much for joining us for lunch today. We hope it was tasty and you got some good information at the same time. And we hope that everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank y'all.